a mountain man needed to survive is what I have pretty much on the table. This is what he would carry. He would have a 50 caliber Hawkins or better, not just a Hawkins, a 50 caliber rifle or better. He'd carry a pistol. He'd carry a tomahawk or a little small axe to cut wood and stuff with. He'd have traps to carry. His possible bag, everything that he needed for his muzzleloader, his pistols would be all in this. His powder is in the powder horn that I've got here. And when they're loading that, you never pour powder from a powder horn straight down the barrel, because this is like a bomb. This here's a newer fangled angle one, but they had a powder measure. They'd measure so much powder, and then they'd pour this down the barrel, not this. This is more safe because this is only here. I'd rather have this go in my hand than this. But they always kept their powder in a horn because it would keep it dry. They had round balls like these here, a 50 caliber. That's all they are, a little round ball lead. And that's what they used in both of their rifles and their pistol, because that way they didn't have to compensate for a different bolt. They'd always have a good sharp knife to butcher their game or fight off with whatever they had to do, grizzly bear or whatever. When it come down to living in the wild, everything they got, they had to depend on. They would have to be able to start a fire. Never had matches like we did nowadays. You had to do it flint and steel. And to do the flint, they had to make a little box where they could make char. It's pieces of cloth that they would put in a can, put it in the fire, and when they see smoke coming out of the little hole, it's burning inside the can. So when they couldn't see that smoke no more, all this material is burned up. So they'd take it out of the fire and let it cool. There they had their char. They had to have the char to make a nesting for their flint and steel. So their nesting would be something like this. This here is jute rope, and it's made out of regular jute rope. They'd cut it and pull it apart, or they would use dried leaves, pine cones, anything that they could get that was dry grass. They would make their nesting. I've got some here all made up. So this is what they would do. They would take their char, they'd put some char on their nesting. They had to have their flint and steel. They had to have something to make a spark. And to get a spark on there, the char, you'd want a little red spot on there to get this started. There we go. That wasn't supposed to do that way. That's a boo-boo. But main things they had to do that to get a fire going, to cook their meat. And if they couldn't cook their meat, they ate a lot of raw meat. Their pistols, same way. When they loaded it, they would use powder from their powder horn and use a round ball. They would have to have a cap. They'd put the powder in, the round ball would all be down there. They would have to have a cap. This is percussion cap. So when this would go off, this is what happened. You had to have this to ignite the powder and the ball out. and the same for the rifle. That's what it would have to be. It was a hard life, but as they went out and they done their trapping, they made their money, they traded with the Indians and everything. Once they had to carry all this, they made their money, they buy a mule or a horse, start packing this stuff. Then they had a tent like this. They got a home away from home. This is what they had to live in. The trap, they had a trap. They had to set these for small critters. Come on. Once it was set, they would take it out, camouflage it somewhat, waiting for an animal to come along. And when they'd get their foot in there, that's how they would catch their game. This would be tied to a tree. The animal would be hanging this way. He'd go collect these martins or whatever it'd be in there. They would tan the hide, eat the meat. That's the way they lived. It was a rough life, but they claim it was a good life. Free, do whatever they please. The furs, that's what they do. They go to rendezvous like this, and they would trade it to other vendors for blankets, more ammunition, powder, maybe a new gun, whatever, rifle, new knives. They was always looking for something to better their life. They'd buy a tent if they could afford it. If they had a horse, that's whatever to help haul. The more they bought, the more they had to have something heavy to haul it around. They ate. They never had a fancy stove like I have here. This here's a brazier. They done a ground fire. When they got done, they put their fire out. They moved to another location, but they hunt beaver, rabbit, anything that was edible, and something that the furs that they could sell at a rendezvous. Every year, once a year, they would go wherever there was a rendezvous, and that's where they made their living. That's where they did their trade.
This is a shepherd's wagon, and it was a way that you could take a farm wagon and convert it into a wagon that you could live in. Where the Conestogas and the prairie schooners, they were really freight haulers that you pull across the prairie and they'd haul their belongings in it, but they'd walk alongside them and sleep underneath. So this is a wagon that's really built to live in. You can see the cupboard on the side of the wagon. It folds up and all our dishes fit in there. Water barrel, and all of our furniture here folds up and fits in the back of the wagon. You want to step on around this way. Take a peek inside. If you want to just step in the doorway, maybe. Sure. And I can talk. And it has a very comfy bed in there, and storage underneath, and storage in the sides, and it's really quite comfortable. Last night was so chilly that we burnt 2 candle lanterns in there to add a little warmth. This is where we cook out here. This is called a brazier. We build a little fire in there and we cook over the brazier. And then we're going to have a big kettle going over a fire and do some stew in there later. highest pitched flute, and I blow in the end, and the air travels down here and comes out across this little hole, and that's what makes the sound. So my little hummingbird flute here is the highest pitched one I have.
Good fishing chair too.
And then in contrast, the lowest pitched one I have, and the reason it's lower, the larger the diameter of the tube and the longer the tube, the lower the pitch. And then I have what's called the drone flute. Kind of looks like a double-barreled shotgun, and it's actually like two flutes together. It has two blow holes also. And one side you can change the notes on, and the other side just blows a steady drone note. So that's kind of fun. This is always attracts the boys. This is covered in rattlesnake skin. And then I had bought a lot of my flutes from one special man in Indiana named Douglas Thunderhorse, and kind of became friends with him and his wife just through emails. And Duke and I did go out to visit him one time, and I got an email from him one day, and he said he'd like to make me a very special flute for free, and he wanted me to tell him what I would like on it to make it special. And I'd seen some of his inlay work, so I said I'd like inlay of some sort, and a connection to birds and a connection to horses. And so you can see the horse up here, and this part is called the totem or the fetish. And then the feathers would be the connection to birds. And this is abalone shell and mother of pearl. And it's just as smooth as can be. He just did a beautiful job. I'll play a little bit of a song here for you, or maybe a small bit of a couple different songs on a couple different flutes to give you a little better idea.
Okay, now I got another campsite story to go.
And then I'll play one of the next to the lowest pitched one. And the way I got intrigued by flutes is I simply heard a recording of them. And it was so peaceful and meditative sounding that I just kind of fell in love with the sound. Any questions?
And this one here, the blacksmith has forge welded this. So he put you can see the lines here where he put a hardened piece of metal in the middle, so it keeps a better edge on this one. This is one just out of hardened steel that there was just one piece that was wrapped around and riveted, which is a real simple way to make this. And you can do this out of steel that you can temper so you can keep a real good sharp edge on it. And it's a little lighter hawk. The designs on these, here's one that a guy made that he put some really nice designs on it. Just makes them prettier. They don't make them throw any better. And they're just different styles. I mean, different blacksmiths make different styles of hawks. And the biggest thing on these hawks are,
with that comment.
Yeah, that's what you're blaming on.
some of these have a little heavier blade in them, and they'll stick okay, but you need to file out your cutting edge of this so they stick better, where some of these the whole blade is thinner and they just stick way better.
Battery fire! Fire by the battery! Fire! That took a long time to explain. We can do that 3 times a minute.
He's cleared.
That's what I like to hear.
Nice to bet. Clear.
That's the communication I've been waiting for. Who wants to do it again?
Me.
Take one out.
Me. Do I get an answer? Me.
Lift it up. Go ahead. I'm watching you.
She has one. She has another one in there.
Oh, you do? Wow. On the big rock candy mountain. Go ahead and walk up. Round advancing to 2. Round advancing to 1. They got a lot of rounds. We're going to use a lot of rounds, so we're going to shoot a lot. Make a lot of noise. Fish your face. Fish your face. Fish your face.
Round home. Pick and pride.
That's better.
Gunners to the ready. Gun 2 ready. Gunners to the ready. Gun 1 ready.
Fire by the battery! Battery ready! Fire!
Set up from the 1861 to 1864 Civil War era. A lot of just amputations they did back then, especially in a field hospital. They would have never done any major surgeries in these. It would have been just get them so they stable so they can go down to the next hospital. Otherwise, you had different anesthesias, a lot of medical whiskeys that the doctors end up drinking more of the medical whiskey than they use. Opiates, different things. A lot of your doctors would have went in with a good full head of hair and came out bald or gray at the end of the 4 years because it would have been so much stress from the screaming and the yelling from the patients over the time. Other than that, you just basic tools back then. Different types of scalpels and pliers and tweezers. I mean, nothing really fancy like you'd see nowadays. A lot of the times it was a bullet about that size they would have to pull out of a person. If not, if they didn't get hit by something like that from a cannon, and there would have been several different kinds of that. It would have been a solid ball, and then one was powder in the inside that would have exploded. It made little pieces of shrapnel through the body, or taking out a whole entire row of people. They did a lot of bloodletting with leeches. Just let them to try to get rid of the bacteria, which they didn't know about then. They had no idea of bacteria or any kind of sterilization. they would have took one tool from one patient without washing it to the next one. No kind of boiling it or anything. And then they would take pus and maggots from one person and put it on the next because they thought it was helping. People would come with diarrhea or other small health little, and they would give them they called it the blue pill, but what it was a mercury pill with blue dye. And that was their magical cure-all for everything. And then that was about it. I mean, whiskeys and stuff they would tell people to drink. Toothache, they would just rip it out. Usually it was just a pair of pliers. I don't have, my next thing I'm gonna add is it's a little hook shape. Almost, have you ever seen those small plumber pliers? Kind of swivel, that's almost what it looks like. And they just twist it out. No kind of pain medication or anything, they just reach in there, yank it.
Oh, look at all the boys and girls out there. Why are you not here with us today? You know, these rendezvous are fantastic places to come and learn to do all the things that Mom and Dad don't let you do at home. Leave it to us pirates to know that. You know, if you come out sometime, I might just show you what's in this box. Because, you know, pirates and the treasure, we're not going to talk about that. It's locked up, and they're not giving me the key until you come out here next year. So, I want you to know, not only do we have the treasure, we've brought the ship. Right here. This is the piece of the top deck of a tall ship. You've seen a pirate ship, haven't you? Captain Hook's ship, perhaps? Maybe mine, the Black Pearl? No? This ship right here, this piece of wood is where everybody walks when they're on the main deck of the ship. This was taken off a ship that was built during our own Civil War. Now, in 1863, they were cutting the wood to build this boat. It's called the Star of India. It's the oldest functioning tall ship in the world. Now, you know, I happened to be aboard that ship. I may have been shopping for a new one for myself, who knows? But when I was there, they were doing some work. And I noticed they had pieces laying around on the deck. I walked over to the sailors that were working on it, and I said, what on earth are you doing to your boat? You're not taking it apart, are you? Don't ruin it, don't wreck it, don't blow holes in my ship. He says, no, we're repairing it. You see? You look really close. You can tell that there was water getting between the boards and it was rotting it all out. You can see all the little pieces. They put tar and gasketing between the boards to keep the water out. They don't want the water in there. And there's a bolt that helped hold the entire boat together, and the water was getting in and caused it to weaken. And they were only fixing it. So I thought about it and I said, you know, I'm not going to take the whole ship yet because I'm going to let them fix it for free. Then my crew don't have to do it. But perhaps I can take it a piece at a time. Want to see more of the ship? Want to learn more about pirates? Then get your parents to bring us out or come out next year with your schools. Can't wait to see you. Stay safe.